All right, we're gonna, excuse me, finish with the end of chapter 1 and start into chapter 2. So my surgery is set. I will be at the hospital tomorrow morning at 5:30. Really happy about that. They'll do the surgery at 7:30. So for the next 2 weeks, in other words, from this Thursday to next week, we will not meet in this class. Do not come. I will have recordings for you to go over those particular chapters. For the efficiency template that you will have listed, and you might even see it. We'll do that in class. Don't worry about that particular part of it, okay? So, bless you. We won't have a test until I come back and get into class. I will be open and available to emails. Please, I'll need something to do while I'm sitting there doing my knee like that for 2 hours a day, okay? So anyway, any other questions? Just remember, you don't have to be here for the next 2 weeks, this week and the next, all right? Until I send you an email, okay? Maybe a little further, we'll see. Okay, so the last thing I'm kind of following up on with chapter 1 is just a particular last slide to show you what the channel functions are. And I show this last slide to you in anticipation of you looking at it and saying, holy cow, that's a lot, but I'm gonna go ahead and do it anyway, okay? You will get this as you go through the class, and you'll get a better understanding of everything that it's showing, because it's a lot, okay? Let's see. Let's try that one more time. Show up. There you are. Okay. So the last thing that we're going to talk about, we'll talk about the framework as well, but the last thing to talk about are what are the key functions that are performed by marketing channels. These are the 9 different things that flow through the channel. Now I'm gonna give this to you. This is in chapter 1. We're gonna talk about it also in chapter 3 as well. So this is kind of your first introduction or kind of a taste of this. I'll talk about this again in detail. We'll talk about it again in chapter 3 before we do the test again, so you'll soak it in. Now, if you think that it is only just the good that moves through the pipeline, no, there are more than those. As a matter of fact, there are 9 key functions, and without further ado, here they are. Now, kind of explaining this as well, think of this as the channel structure, all right, from beginning to end. These are the manufacturers or the producers at the beginning. These are 2 of the intermediaries in the middle, the wholesalers and retailers. And then ultimately, here is our consumer, and our consumer is part of our channel structure because consumers perform channel functions, all right? So we'll talk about them briefly. It's interesting, you notice physical possession and ownership are actually separate, which is a good thing to understand. To give you an example of where you can physically have something and don't own it, does anybody know what a consignment store is? Have you ever heard the term? At a consignment store, you can actually go down King Street, and if you look at one of the older antique furniture stores there, that is a consignment store. So how does that work? Well, the individual that owns this property has a very valuable piece of property. It is in that particular area, but that individual does not want to go through the difficulty of trying to put all the things in that particular store to be able to sell. And so what they do is they say, look, if you've got your own furniture, you can leave it here. And so individuals with antique furniture, other unique things, leave it there at the consignment store. The consignment store doesn't take any title to it, but they just simply sell the space. If that place were to burn down, the consignment store would only have the damages to that particular property. So when they sell it, something gets sold, it's out the door, and the consignment store takes, I think it's 10%. And so that's how it works. That's an example of having physical possession without ownership. Those two things are very important for you to remember because physical possession and ownership generally move together, but kind of not always, okay? So promotion, of course, is exactly what you consider it to be if you're thinking of push strategy down. This is the ability to sell downward through the structure, ultimately to the consumer. Now, technically, the consumers, the producers can go directly to the consumers, and the consumers can have demand, and the demand pulls them through the system. But for test purposes, just remember which way the arrow goes. Negotiation, financing, and risk many times go together. I've said this before, if you get a chance to take a course in negotiation, take it, all right? It will be a great feather in your cap and open yourself up to the possibilities that maybe you're better at this than you think. Financing, of course, the financing goes in both directions, risk taking as well. And financing and risk very much travel together. Ordering tends to be in an upstream way, payment moves up, and then the last is information sharing. A test answer. If I were going to say which one of these is the most important, of course, they all is, but information sharing in this day may be the most valuable. The willingness to share information up and downstream, especially to avoid redundancies and risk, may be the most important of all of these functions as well, okay? Usually, there's like 3 rules to remember, okay? The channel functions can occur at different times. Not every channel member needs to participate in the system, but every function must be performed. If you are to remove a channel member from the system, you still must find some way to perform the function. You can eliminate members in the channel, but you cannot eliminate the functions they perform. And then finally, the success of one function is directly correlated to the success of all the others. They work together, they flow together, and they have success together. And that's about all I feel like talking about right now. When we get to to chapter 3, and we start talking about the basics of channel functions, we'll dig into this deeper. But I want you to see, if you think about it, with so many things that go on in channels, you can get an idea of just all of the power and complexities in channels. All right. So some other things, just remember, some move forward through the channel, like physical possession and ownership. Some move backwards, like ordering and payment, and some move in both directions, like risk and financing and information sharing. And as I said, in my own firm beliefs, information sharing is probably the top. Now, I'll give you this last one as not as a test question, but something that I would ask you to come back to, because this is a fairly decent one of Palmentier's slides. The thing I like most about this particular slide is the fact that this is what's known as an iterative function, okay? It gives you a greater understanding that this is a process and not an event. that things are constantly moving, always evolving, and forever changing. And it is important to understand that when you go from the analysis to the implementation stage, you're right back around again, because guess what? Things change, okay? So when we start talking about channel systems as we are, we start out first where we are in this class. We're going to be talking about end user analysis, make or buy analysis, and that's analyzing in the analysis phase. The next is we'll talk about 3 of the key decisions that you make in terms of intensity and selectivity, and then dual distribution. We'll talk about those decisions that you have to make as a channel partner. Then how do you compare and contrast what a well-developed system is? And then finally, in the implementation stages, we'll talk about the big 3: power, conflict, and relationships. And so this is a framework of the way the way that the class is going to work, okay? All right. And we end chapter 1. Questions, comments? All right, let's see. Let's see, maybe I should have named that one. Hello, this is the one I want. Okay. So I'm shocked. I'm playing right away. Okay. So from your basics, principles of marketing, probably the 3 most important things, actions that you will do in analysis as a marketing person: segmentation, targeting, positioning. Segmentation, the grouping into unique segments or market segments. Targeting, deciding on which to target. And then positioning is creating a unique place in the consumer mind and this is the key point, which I won't write down, I'll make you write it down, relative to the competition. Positioning is creating a unique place in the consumer mind relative to the competition. Why? You have to know your competition. You want to be different from them. You want to provide something unique and special. Because if there's no difference between you and the competition, how do consumers choose which? If there's no difference between you and your competition, how do consumers choose? One word. If I've got 2 things and I'm looking at these 2 things and they're so close together, I have no way to possibly separate them. Which one will I choose? How will I choose? Oh, please. Yes.
Price.
Yes. Thank you. You made my day. Okay. Yes. Price. This is the reason you do segmentation, targeting, positioning. You want to create a unique place because otherwise the consumer, if they have no way of making a choice, they'll go with the one that's the cheapest. Simple as that. So having said that, we find lots of great ways to position our products, lots of ways position our promotion, and a lot of ways to position our price, promotion, product. Okay, all three of those, but place has a place. And so this is a commercial by Walmart that is, it is screaming at a particular group, all right? It is an exact targeting by place. And so without further ado, let's go on. I want you to notice that this commercial signaling it to you. I want you to listen to the signals.
What's happening? It's the future, Michael.
Oh, I'm not Michael.
Oh, don't worry, he calls everyone Michael.
Easter egg. That's Sam Walton's original Dodge that he drove across the United States as he opened Walmarts across America. So all of these, and does anybody I always ask this, but does anybody know what that song is? It's 40 years old. I have no problem saying that. It's as old as I am, or older. Oh, well, I'm older. It's called Cars by Gary Newman. It's new wave, 1982, 83. Perfect song for this. Now, look at these cars, the cars that were in there. What era are the cars, identified with? What years can you think of?
Early 2000s,
Yeah, maybe even
Late
earlier than that.
90s.
Pardon me?
90s.
90s, yeah, you getting it, yeah, because we're looking at Jurassic Park. You're looking at, oh gosh, Back to the Future, even 80s in a way. So think about these cars, Flintstones, all of the others. They carry a vibe and a signal to individuals in that particular era. Now, what are the ages of those people now that were kids then?
30, 40.
Yeah, 30 or 40. So what's their life situation as a general thing you might think of? Okay, so we're talking segmentation, so not everybody's in this way. But what do you think most people in their 30s and 40s are like?
Busy family.
Busy family life. You nailed it. Good. Okay. So what's going on in this commercial? Oh, what was the commercial about? Pick up. Buy online, pick up at the curb. This is a very unique, very narrow market segment. And it has one advantage of buy online, pick up in store. And what is it? Yes, and another. It's free. Free pickup, but one more thing. If you're in this market segment and you're busy families, what else about curbside pickup?
Efficient.
Pardon?
Efficient.
Yeah, one more thing. Yeah, one more thing. You're almost there. Pardon?
Easy.
Easy, you're absolutely right. But why is it so easy? What do you do in a busy family situation? Yes, and you don't have to get out the kids out of the car. Thank you. That was it. Okay. So just think about how many ways you can slice this apple when you think about it, okay? So you can buy online and you can have it delivered at your house. You can buy it online, pick up in store, buy online, pick up at curb. Multiple ways. Go in the store, order, have it shipped to your house. Each one of these is a unique market segment that has unique individuals in it. And their segments are identified not by what they buy, but how they buy it and how it's delivered. This is why place needs to be considered in market segmentation just as much, and maybe even more valuable than product or price or promotion. Because in this, service is one of those ways that we can differentiate ourselves if we're absolutely selling the same thing. And once again, if I have no way to make my sale different from another, then I have issues. I have to find some ways to make it different. Did I talk about Lexus in here? I talked about it, you saw, I talked about how that works. By the exact same reasons. If I give service and service is answered and accepted, then I have created a higher value for my particular good. But if I'm paying the same price or even slightly more, I will value it more. Okay, very good. All right, so let us move on to chapter 5. Oh, excuse me, chapter 2. I'm sorry, I'm getting two of my classes mixed up. Okay, slideshow, setup, browse by individual, 5, and that share. Okay. End user analysis, segmentation, and targeting. So, as said before, and said again and again, let us once again worship the end user. Let us look at these individuals, see what their desires are, and let us provide a service that creates value for them. Developing channels always starts with the end user because the end user holds the power of the purse. If we look to how we sell the offerings, we will be able to understand how best to serve them, which means that as marketers and in marketing channels, we do not consider ourselves on the service side, or excuse me, the supply side, but we look at the demand side. You'll find in many books, Kotler is one of them, that calls the supply chain in marketing the demand chain. I think that is a more complete definition on the marketing side. We look at how to sell the offering, how we sell the offering and how it creates value. But before we can design an efficient channel, we must first understand our end users. This chapter focuses on the demand side, on the end user, the downstream side, because ultimately that is what creates the whole channel flow. Not what they want to consume, but how they want to buy it, how they want to purchase it, and then ultimately, by the very same token, how do we go and return it through the stream? So this is just basic stuff. The end users really have varying preferences and demands in their service outputs. The things that they want are more important than others. Some of us would not be caught dead inside a Walmart or a Costco and others relish it, and others just simply stand it because they don't have any other place to go. But knowing those preferences ultimately will help us to decide whether or not we're building a particular channel. We group the way consumers want things by what is known as the service outputs. What do consumers want from us? What are the levers that we can choose to make things happen as we wish? We look at three things from our service outputs. They help to reduce the search process for our consumers. In other words, they make it easier for us. They help to reduce the waiting time for consumers. And whether or not we must store things or give them as needed. So an example of preferences like this, it is not surprising to see a Hertz or an Avis at an airport renting cars. But it is very unusual to see a Hertz and an Avis in a subdivision. However, there's one car company, rental company, that has invested itself in subdivisions and suburban areas, and that's Enterprise Rent-A-Car. Enterprise Rent-A-Car is a different mission from Hertz and Avis. They want to focus on those individuals who need to rent cars beyond the standard 3 days, which is kind of the industry standard. Enterprise Rent-A-Cars, the expectations they'll rent 4 days or even more. They also tend to partner with dealerships so the consumers who have to keep their cars in for a while, they have somewhere to go. And so when Enterprise looks for a location in the city, generally they're looking around suburban areas because that's the way the target fits it. Another example of segmentation. So, for those of you who have never used a pod, these things are pretty awesome. My sister has run them several times. So we have the difficulties of temporary storage. We have locations where we have to put things inside of somewhere else and keep them until they're needed. And that is what pods do. Pods allow us to bring a, whatever you want to call it, a storage locker to your house. You can stack those things in the storage locker. You can call pods. They'll take it away for you. They'll store it in a location for however long you want. And then once you've eventually moved, or if you're in the same location, it'll either ship it back to you or wherever you need it. This is basically a combination. It carries convenience, but it also carries storage and movability at the same time. It's a very unique way of doing it, very successful. This is an example also of market segmentation by place. All right, so what we're going to talk about next is how those products are bought and serviced. And these are what are known as service outputs. There are 6. And so how we go about manipulating these 6 is how we go about creating segmentation. And so one of the things I talked about just very briefly is CDW has a certain number of individuals that are business clients that come in, and they actually support 2 of those out of the same area. And depending on who you are, CDW can, create a product or service out of the specialty of both of those things, depending on whether you need a lot of service or whether you need just a little bit. If you're competent, maybe all you need are deliveries. But if you need more expertise, CDW's got that covered as well. And so these are the 6 service outputs. Okay, so some of the basic rules. The first basic rule is all else being equal, a level playing ground. I will talk about these 6 at one at a time, so you don't feel like you have to be rushed to write these down. End users prefer a marketing channel that provides these service outputs, or let's just say more. And we'll talk about them one at a time. They're bulk breaking, spatial convenience, closeness, the waiting or delivery time, the variety of the product, customer service, and then finally that one that shows up is information sharing. And so we're going to go through them one at a time. So my wife, Dr. Albinson, is the one who does all the major packing when we go to locations. So we have a timeshare in Myrtle Beach, and we never stay there. We go to Surfside Beach, which is lower down on the coast, but a lot quieter. Anyway, one of the things that she always brings with her is she brings a small bottle of dishwashing liquid. Always. And cleaning supplies and those kind of things. Would it surprise you to know that a little bottle like that is the same price as a bottle that big? Well, how can it be the same price if it isn't delivering the same amount? It's because you buy a desired number of units in exactly that. And so breaking bulk is the buying in the right size lots. Because as a consumer, it reduces the need for me to carry unnecessary inventory. So one of us can carry inventory, either the store that I go to or my home. And depending on which one carries the inventory, that determines whether or not what the price is going to be. Well, if inventory has to be carried at the store, they're going to make you pay. However, if you buy in a large size and break bulk at home, well, they'll give you a break. The more bulk, spit it out, the more bulk breaking, got it out, the channel does, and the smaller the lot sizes, the higher is the channel's input level, and the end user is willing to pay a higher price. So what is the perfect lot size? Well, once again, if marketing is context driven, and marketing is always coming up with different answers. So what is a magic number when it comes to finding candies? What's a number on the candy wrappers that they're trying to hit now to make you think that they're more health conscious? That's one. But there's another one that we always look at. Calories, exactly, very good. So 100 calories or less is kind of like the Mendoza line of where they're looking for when it comes to calories. Now, they even try to fool you because they make a big candy bar and they say tear and share, like I'm going to share my M&Ms. But yeah, the truth is that if you break it down into smaller lot sizes, the consumer will consider it valuable. So that is why the large Snickers bar many times comes in 2 smaller Snickers bars, not that you're going to share it, but you identify it having 2 things instead of 1. We're all human beings, okay? Not only that, but they're right-sized so that you could theoretically only eat 1 of them. Good luck. But once again, we perceive it as being more valuable. The more we break bulk, the greater value consumers perceive them to be. Interesting thing about 8-ounce drinks, I drink those now and I don't drink 12 ounces anymore. The residual satisfaction of a Coke is almost exactly at the same at an 8-ounce size as it is at a 12-ounce size, believe it or not, because the satisfaction in the last 4 ounces, we don't feel as much, okay? Which means if I crack 2 8-ounce Coke Zeros instead of 1 16-ounce Coke Zero, I will get greater satisfaction from those 2 8 ounces than I will from a 16 ounce. That's consumers, okay? Bulk breaking number 1. So this is an example. So they use the same one I does. You know, you pay a considerably higher price, but you know what? That's what you expect. Just remember, we appreciate them more. The next is spatial convenience. Spatial is what it sounds like, how close it is to us. In a market of retail outlets where they're scattered everywhere, the greater number of retail outlets reduces our transportation cost, our search cost, and increases our customer satisfaction, especially for those items that are convenience items. So a convenience item is exactly where it says. Now, if you remember your shopping categories from principles, this is those items that the best thing is to purchase them as locally or as close as you can. Those are convenience items. These also are not just shopping centers, they're kiosks, they're vending machines, they're gas stations. And we can find spatial convenience to be so desirable that we will change the way we do our shopping just to make sure it's closer. Anybody use Redbox? Anybody?
Used to.
Used to. Isn't that amazing? Streaming has come along. And you guess what? It's the convenience, okay? Before Redbox, there was Blockbuster. Blockbuster used to be down the street, and I'll talk about Blockbuster when we talk about some of the other things. Then all of a sudden in 2003, this company came around and said, well, maybe people would just rather, instead of going through all that rigmarole on a Friday afternoon, maybe they'd like to get it from their local grocery store. That's crazy. How do you get it from a grocery store? Well, they don't have to do it there. All you have to do is just put up an item that will sell the disc for you. And so that was Netflix's great thing. And then also Redbox did the same thing. Now streaming in essence is taken over. And then there's a certain amount of retro that goes into owning the own disc. So spatial convenience is a big one. Waiting time. So waiting time, how long we're willing to wait, is directly correlated to the amount of risk in buying that particular good. End users are patient, especially when it comes to risk. However, end users, once they lose the value of wait, in other words, waiting, there usually tends to be some kind of compensation that is expected for waiting. Quick delivery is rewarded. The difficulty with things like quick delivery, by the way, just to let you know, the difficulty with things like that are that maximum expectations become minimum expectations real soon. So I remember when I was running an internal service provider, one of the things that I offered for my consumers was I did email scanning, you know, for all the bad stuff that goes through. And that was actually like a $5 option along with your email. And after about 2 months, I decided to stop charging. And my partner said, why are we losing $5 a month? Because I said, in 2 months, everybody's going to expect to do it. And yes, it was. So at least we came out first, okay? The expectation is that these are trade-offs. Now, intensity of demand varies, especially when it comes to original versus post-purchase service. I had the honor I actually watched an MRI machine being delivered to a hospital, and boy, that's a job. But think about MRIs and how much they cost, and their prices are now into the, hundreds of thousands, if not millions. And if one of those things goes down, it is an interrupted revenue stream to the hospital. Because I forget, it's like $5,000 a shot, for doing an MRI. It's some money there, okay? So the waiting time is drastically reduced after post-sales. So this is just a discussion about the trade-off of intensity of demand and quick delivery. So realize that service outputs do not create themselves in a vacuum. They are all connected together. And so this is an example of in Mexico, usually beer sales go through grocery stores and liquor stores and restaurants, but they're very small local distributors. And one of the things that we'll talk about when we get into chapter 3, especially, is that there are service outputs that consumers demand. And when the service supplied is less than the service demanded, consumers find a way. And so what you have is generally that in apartments in Mexico, you'll find somebody who will generally be the neighborhood buyer for the entire apartment. They will go through, they will bottle it for you, and they can meet this demand at a lower end where the ones above them can't. In Russia, they do the same thing they do with vodka. So generally in each neighborhood, there's one individual who will store and manage vodka, and you will bring with yourself a glass liter jug to be able to buy your vodka. So this is an example, all of these kind of mixed together. So, okay. Variety is usually how many different offering categories you provide. And so if I were looking at condiments, I would look at mustard and ketchup and mayonnaise and all of the other things that cocktail sauce, those kind of things. And that is the breadth of the product lines. Within mustard, you have the number of them. So French's. French's is the only one that does not use corn syrup. If you get French's mustard or French's ketchup, it's non-GMO, non-corn syrup. It's just ketchup or mustard. Just one thing. Yeah, I'm a nerd. Okay, so French's, oh gosh, Blue Plate, all the others. And this is what's considered the assortment, the depth of product brands and models. So in my role as a marketing nerd, one day, well, just it happens, I go through things. When you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So I was going through Walmart and I was looking at the mustards. And so just looking at the mustards, I was seeing how many different mustards they had, different assortments or whatever. And yes, I actually counted them and I came over to 27 different varieties and assortments of mustards. I didn't go then right after, but after going to Harris Teeter, I went there and just browsed and looked at the category of mustards that are at Harris Teeter, and I counted 78. These are examples of how we can use the service outputs of variety and assortment to basically identify what our corporation is. Walmart's belief is that they're going to be 100 yards wide and 2 inches thick. And that's the way they do it. They want to carry as many things as they reasonably can, but whether or not they're going to have whether they're going to have an assortment of each thing, that's in question. They'll have a wide variety. You'll find everything out of Walmart, but you may not find your special thing. So an example of that also is, like I've said, when I went to Lowe's, could not find the muffins there, English muffins there. Lowe's actually ordered it for me. But that model doesn't exist in Walmart. So a regular supermarket has anywhere from 52,000 to 150,000 separate line items. They're just amazing in and of themselves. Whereas a Walmart has something like about a third of those items, but they cover every category. Walmart has determined that their limited assortment is satisfactory for their users. And where they need to expand, they have expanded. I've seen them do community coffee, Gevalia, all sorts of different things in those particular product categories. So there is flexibility there. But just realize this is one of the ways that a place can create its unique identity. So Hot Topic is one of those very unique places. Hot Topic is also one of those thought pieces that has always come around, because nobody up till this has figured out how to way of making money with a fad. Because fads, by their very basic, explode and go away practically overnight. But Hot Topics, which focuses generally, in the people in their teens, they can roll out a line in generally 8 weeks. So to give an example, in the traditional department stores, what's happening right now is in other companies, they're starting to look at the new product lines for spring. So generally what happens is fashion is 6 to 8 weeks down the road always, because it has to be that way. Hot Topic doesn't even need 8 weeks anymore. It's kind of like maybe 2 weeks now. I mean, speed is crucial. So they get it out when everything flames up, then throw it in the dollar bin just as the moment that it dies out. Hot Topic has been able to create that quick delivery, which isn't really seen in the fashion world, and they do it quite well. Customer service. This is my example when I'm talking about Lexus, and your ability to separate yourself from your competition by providing something that they don't. Customer service are all aspects of easing the shopping and purchasing process. This includes competent salespeople, after the sales service, and expertise among the retailers in general. We know this, that excellent customer service translates directly into sales and into profits. It is no wonder that steel tools can charge 40 to 50% more than all the other retailers of power equipment, because you buy the expertise that steel brings along with it. I was in Charlotte this weekend. My daughter was having a cheer competition, and we were walking through one of the malls and saw the Apple store there. There had to be 300 people in that Apple store. It was crazy. Just to mention this, just in terms of customer service, of which Apple is noted for, because that's what customers determine. Apple stores have the highest revenue stream per square inch of any retail outlets in the world. That includes diamond stores. So it just gives you an idea of the revenue of one of those little places. And Microsoft, who knows a good idea when they steal one, started opening their own stores. So they mentioned DirecTV. DirecTV does a good job. avoiding the churn and burn, the turnover rate that you see a lot. And one of the reasons is they invest in their particular their customer service. So if you sign on with DirecTV as a customer relations rep or CRF, they will give you every single channel that DirecTV has. You will get that as part of the work there, and that gives you the experience so that if you're trying to help a customer, you will know things inside and out. Customer service can be a game changer between selling products and making profit. So this is an example. Anybody ever been to a Cabela's? They're massive. I mean, they're crazy. Let me kind of show one to you if I've got a chance. Let's see. They're also owned by Bass Pro Shop. Oh, which is the one? Baton Rouge. See if I can find this on the map. Okay, so Bass Pro Shops. Let's see. See if I get a, yeah. Let's go take our guy and hang him there and see what's going on inside the Bass Pro Shop. So that's your typical Bass Pro Shop. Everybody, oops, hold on. Let me share that. Everybody knows what's going on. There's a tank with a bunch of fish in it. Every once in a while, they'll stack one of those tanks with about, 24 bass. They'll get somebody and show you how to actually fish, and you can watch it through the see-through glass about what's the proper way to catch and capture bass. It's funny that they did this inside, because what I was kind of hoping, let's see if I can do this one more time, let's see if I can just drop you right here and you're outside. There you go. So this is Baton Rouge. This is a man-made 3-acre lake. They made the lake so that you could take a bass boat out, run it around this lake, and check out whether or not you actually want to buy it. Yeah, it's cool, isn't it? Yeah, it is. Okay. So yeah, this is off of O'Neill Lane in Baton Rouge, East Baton Rouge. And that is the uniqueness about customer service and when you can deliver like this. And so this kind of flies in the face that men don't like to shop. Well, they don't necessarily, but it does kind of work against it, So it puts you in a natural scene. You have waterfalls. You saw what was there. It appeals to every member of the family, and it draws from everyone. And that's the truth. And the truth is that women do 70% of all retail spending in the United States. So, they're the ones who you have to convince when you're going there. But this is kind of one of those openings. The last is, and the one that I talked about, which may be the most important, is information sharing. So, education provided to end users can be some of the most important things that you can provide. There's a certain amount of, there's an enormous amount of risk that you can train and help your customer, and unfortunately, give away the beast, okay? So one of my worst problems as a salesperson was I love to listen to myself talk. And I always thought I love saying too much, let's put it that way. So once I taught my consumers about what they needed to buy, they went somewhere else and got it cheaper. Thing happens, okay? So examples of this also is that when you provide information, it creates solutions. And so if you were to go in Lowe's Home Improvement Center, once again, I love that it's a home improvement center, not a hardware store. One of the things that you will notice, or they used to have, is a sign up, and it would say how to repair with grout, or how to be able to lay carpet. you would have these 30-minute classes that Lowe's would put on that would help to educate you. And because they educated you, you wish to be able to purchase from there. There was I'm sure many of you know AutoCAD. AutoCAD came out in 1983. It was a revolution to individuals who wanted to have a less expensive computer-aided design package. The big difference was, or the big thing was, oh, how do I do it? Okay, which was a big question. So AutoCAD, what we did was, when I was working in Lafayette, we paired it with a Victor computer and a Hewlett Packard desktop plotter that could do massive ones, because we were in Lafayette, and this is where engineers for the oil field industry was. We could show you could put together a package like that for $10,000 that was the equal of an Intergraph for 80,000. And so this is an example of what solutions retailing is showing consumers, especially with a particular market, that we can handle what your requirements are. We can do it for a considerably different price. Now, to end on this section, I have to mention a few things. What is not listed in service output, what is not a service output, is price. Price is what a customer pays to consume the good. It is not a service that gets consumed. It is significant because consumers make trade-offs. But their expectation is that if the consumer is willing to give up their money, then they ultimately have some particular satisfaction in the purchase. So, the last that I'm going to say in this particular point is to say that these may not be exhaustive. There may be others. We don't know at this point. But that's kind of the reasons why this is an iterative process, and we're always looking to see if consumers are demanding some kind of unique service. And so as long as we are active and thinking, we're always looking for what's next that consumers need and desire. And so this is how we go about segmenting in channels via place. All right, we are done. You will see by Thursday a recording. It might be an early recording from a year or two ago on segmenting users by service outputs and targeting end user segments. Please review those. Hope you have a great rest of the week, and I'll see you when I see you. Bye-bye. Have a good one. Have a good one. Thank you much. I appreciate that.